Henry Morgan remains one of the most colorful figures in the history of Caribbean piracy, a man whose life is shrouded in legends and mysteries. He was born around 1635 in Wales, in the English province, to a prosperous farming family. His father worked the land, and by all accounts, the family lived comfortably. However, young Henry felt that the measured life of rural countryside didn't suit him. He was drawn to the sea, to adventure, to something greater than everyday routine. This yearning for the unknown led him to the port, where he signed aboard a ship bound for Barbados. But fate played a cruel trick on him. Upon arriving at the island, Morgan, according to one version, was sold into slavery. This period of his life remains an enigma. How did a young man from a wealthy family end up in such a situation? Was it a conscious choice or deception? There are no definitive answers, but it's known that Morgan served his term and eventually made his way to Jamaica. This island in the mid-17th century was a true hub of piratical activity. Port Royal, Jamaica's main city, swarmed with buccaneers, adventurers, and those seeking quick riches. It was here that Henry Morgan began his transformation from newcomer to one of the most famous pirates of the era. In Jamaica, Morgan quickly adapted. He joined pirate crews that already had an established system. They attacked Spanish ships and settlements, plundered and divided the spoils. Pirate life was harsh, but profitable. Morgan proved to be bold and clever. Together with a companion, after several expeditions, they accumulated a small capital. Part of the money came from piratical plunder, part from gambling, particularly dice games. These funds became Morgan's first step toward independence. He dreamed of becoming captain of his own vessel instead of working for others. Together with his friend, they purchased their own ship, and Morgan took command. This moment was pivotal. His own ship meant freedom of action, the ability to plan his own operations, and of course, a larger share of the booty. Morgan set his sights on the coast of Campeche, a region in the Gulf of Mexico known for its Spanish settlements and trade routes. But where exactly did he come from to Jamaica? There's speculation that Morgan may have arrived on the island in 1655 as part of Admiral William Penn and General Robert Venable's expedition, which captured Jamaica for England. This expedition was part of the Anglo-Spanish conflict, and Jamaica quickly became a base for pirates operating against the Spanish. If this is true, then Morgan found himself at the epicenter of events that would define his future from the very beginning. The first mentions of Morgan in official records appear in 1665. Jamaica's governor, Thomas Modiford, in his report to the Duke of Albemarle, writes about a band of buccaneers who had set out from Port Royal as early as 1663. This band numbered about 150 men, and Morgan was already participating in piratical operations in the Gulf of Mexico. His name begins to be heard when the pirates, landing in January 1665 at the mouth of the Grijalva River, marched inland into the province of Tabasco. With the support of local Indian guides, they covered 300 miles and stormed the city of Villahermosa, capturing treasure worth 50,000 pieces of eight. However, their joy was short-lived. Returning to the river, the pirates discovered that the Spanish had attacked their ships and captured them. The buccaneers were forced to escape in canoes and other small vessels. This setback didn't stop Morgan. At the roadstead of Campeche, they captured 2 wealthy Spanish ships. Then, rounding Cape Catoche, entered the Gulf of Honduras and plundered the port of Trujillo. Some sources even attribute to Morgan an attack on the city of Granada in Nicaragua in the summer of 1665. Though there's no definitive confirmation of this. Returning to Jamaica in August 1665, Morgan and his companions avoided punishment from Governor Modiford. Moreover, Modiford seemed to sympathize with the pirates as their actions weakened the Spanish, England's main enemy in the region. During this period, Morgan strengthened his reputation and consolidated his position in Jamaica. He married Mary Elizabeth Morgan, daughter of his uncle Edward Morgan, who died in August 1665. This marriage strengthened his ties with the local elite and gave him access to influential circles in Port Royal. Soon, Morgan received the rank of captain and then colonel of the local militia. This was the first step toward official recognition, which would later allow him to operate under the cover of English authorities. Thus concluded the first phase of Henry Morgan's life in the Caribbean. From a young adventurer who found himself in bondage, he transformed into the captain of his own ship and an influential figure among Jamaica's pirates. His cleverness, courage, and ability to find common ground with other buccaneers laid the foundation for future achievements. But ahead lay even more ambitious expeditions that would make his name legendary. After Henry Morgan established himself in Jamaica, his pirate career began to rapidly gain momentum. In 1663-1665, he was already participating in several expeditions that laid the foundation of his reputation. The period after 1665 became decisive when Morgan began to manifest himself as a true leader of buccaneers. His actions in the Gulf of Mexico and other regions of the Caribbean showed that he combined courage with strategic thinking and the ability to organize complex operations. The expedition to Campeche in 1665 became one of the first significant episodes of this period. Morgan, together with a band of pirates, landed at the mouth of the Grijalva River, from where, with the support of Indian guides, they marched inland into the province of Tabasco. Having covered 300 miles, the pirates stormed the city of Villahermosa. This attack brought them booty worth 50,000 pieces of eight, a considerable sum for that time. However, joy from success was overshadowed. Returning to the river, the buccaneers discovered that their ships had been captured by 300 Spanish soldiers. Quite unexpectedly, the pirates found themselves trapped, forced to flee in canoes and other small vessels. This setback could have broken a less resilient leader, but Morgan transformed it into a lesson that hardened him for future operations. Despite losing their ships, the pirates continued their struggle. At the roadstead of Campeche, they captured 2 wealthy Spanish vessels, which allowed them to partially compensate for their losses. Then, rounding Cape Catoche, the band entered the Gulf of Honduras and plundered the port of Trujillo. This attack showed that Morgan and his men could react quickly to circumstances, using any opportunity for enrichment. In the summer of 1665, the pirates may have attacked the city of Granada in Nicaragua, though there's no clear evidence of this. When Morgan returned to Jamaica in August 1665, Governor Thomas Modiford didn't even punish the buccaneers for their actions against the Spanish. On the contrary, Modiford saw in the pirates an instrument for weakening Spanish influence in the region, which served England's interests. This period brought Morgan recognition both through successful raids and through how he began building his authority among pirates. In 1665, after returning to Jamaica, he received the rank of captain and later, colonel of the militia regiment in Port Royal. This rank gave him official status and the ability to operate under the cover of English authorities. At the same time, Morgan remained a pirate, which allowed him to combine official duties with organizing new expeditions. His authority among buccaneers grew as he participated in battles, knew how to distribute booty, and maintain discipline. At the end of 1665, Morgan received a new opportunity to prove himself. Governor Modiford proposed to Pirate General Edward Mansfield, under whom Morgan served as deputy, to undertake an attack on the Dutch island of Curaçao. Although English documents confirm that Morgan officially held this position, his role in planning operations was significant. In January 1666, Mansfield and his captains gathered forces on islands south of Cuba to replenish supplies at Spanish expense. Under cover of a Portuguese privateering commission, the pirates landed on the Cuban coast, marched 42 miles inland, and attacked the city of Sancti Spiritus. A Spanish force of 200 soldiers tried to resist, but the buccaneers routed them and burned the city. This attack showed that pirates under Mansfield's command, and with him Morgan, could act boldly and effectively even against well-defended targets. The next expedition was to Central America. In March 1666, the pirates landed a force of 700 men at the port of Turrialba, planning to capture the cities of Cartago and Esparza in Costa Rica. This operation proved unsuccessful, but Mansfield continued to act. In May of that same year, he captured the island of Santa Catalina, modern-day Providence, hoping to turn it into a pirate base. However, in August, a Spanish expedition returned the island to their control, and Mansfield soon died. His death became a turning point for Morgan. At a general assembly of pirate crews, Henry Morgan was elected the new admiral of the Jamaica fleet. This decision reflected recognition. Morgan had already proven his ability to lead people, plan operations, and achieve results. Elected leader, Morgan gained control of the fleet and began preparing for new expeditions. His authority among pirates was based on successes in battle and on his ability to find common ground with different groups of buccaneers, English, French, and Dutch. He understood that pirate brotherhood was held together by trust and mutual benefit, and he knew how to use this. During this period, Morgan also strengthened his position in Jamaica, where his marriage to Mary Elizabeth Morgan and connections with the local elite opened new opportunities. He was already transforming into a political figure who operated on the boundary between law and lawlessness. In 1668, Henry Morgan finally secured his status as one of the most influential pirate leaders in the Caribbean. His previous expeditions had proven that he possessed the art of planning complex operations that brought enormous plunder. This year brought Morgan a period of bold and ruthless attacks that elevated his reputation among the buccaneers, while simultaneously striking fear into the Spanish. Two key episodes from this time, the attack on the Cuban city of Puerto Príncipe and the sacking of Portobello, became true milestones in his career. At the beginning of 1668, the Jamaica Council officially assigned Morgan a mission that allowed him to recruit English privateers and take Spanish prisoners. This commission, supported by Governor Thomas Modiford, gave Morgan a certain legitimacy, though his actions often went far beyond his official authority. Over 2 months, he gathered forces on islands south of Cuba. Under his command was a flotilla of 12 ships, English and French, with 700 men aboard. This armada became the foundation for his subsequent operations. Morgan's first target was Cuba. In March 1668, his flotilla rounded Cape San Antonio and approached Havana Bay. However, Havana, the capital of Cuba, had fortifications that were too powerful, and Morgan understood that a direct assault could end in disaster. Instead, he decided to attack the less defended city of Puerto Príncipe, known today as Camagüey. On March 27th, the pirates landed on the coast and marched inland. The Spanish governor, learning of the approaching buccaneers, sent a cavalry detachment hoping to stop them. He calculated that the pirates would retreat before an organized force, but Morgan was prepared for such a turn of events. His men, advancing with drumbeats and unfurled banners, formed into battle order in a crescent formation. This tactic allowed them to effectively attack the Spanish, who, despite a strong defense, weakened under the pressure. The battle was brief. The Spanish began to retreat, and the governor, according to accounts, was the first to leave the battlefield. The pirates captured Puerto Príncipe, plundered it, and demanded ransom. As a result, they obtained 500 head of cattle, which became part of their booty. After this, the buccaneers returned to their ships, and the plunder was divided on one of the islands south of Cuba. Each participant in the expedition received approximately 5,000 pieces of eight, including gold, silver, and various goods. For the pirates, this was a significant success that only strengthened Morgan's authority. The true triumph of 1668 was the attack on Portobello, one of the key Spanish ports in Central America. In June, Morgan, commanding only 460 men, decided to attack this well-fortified city. Portobello served as an important trading center through which the Spanish shipped silver and other valuables to Europe. The city's garrison put up fierce resistance, especially in the fort where the governor took refuge. Morgan, known for his ruthlessness and cunning, employed brutal tactics. He ordered captured monks, priests, and women to place ladders against the fortress walls. Hiding behind these human shields, the pirates climbed the walls and after fierce fighting captured the fort. The governor refused to surrender and was killed. For 2 weeks, the pirates plundered the city and its surroundings. Prisoners were subjected to cruel tortures to discover where treasures were hidden. Some were stretched on the rack, others were beaten to death if they refused to reveal hiding places. Even those who possessed only simple property often died under torture. Morgan and his men held everyone until they completely satisfied their demands. As a result, the pirates demanded ransom for the city, 100,000 pieces of eight. The total plunder amounted to 250,000 pieces of eight in gold, besides other goods. Officially, Governor Modiford reported to London that each expedition participant received 60 pounds sterling, but the real sum was significantly larger. Part of the booty went to the pirates, Jamaican authorities, the Lord Admiral of England, the Duke of York, and even King Charles II himself. These expeditions showed that Morgan combined the qualities of a bold warrior and masterful tactician. He skillfully chose targets that brought maximum profit and used any methods to achieve success. The attack on Portobello became a legend among pirates, as the city was considered impregnable. At the same time, these operations revealed Morgan's dark side, his willingness for extreme cruelty that touched civilians and clergy. For pirates, this was considered normal, but for the Spanish, Morgan became the embodiment of terror. Returning to Jamaica, Morgan and his men quickly squandered their booty in the taverns and gambling houses of Port Royal. But instead of stopping, they began planning new expeditions. The success at Portobello only inflamed their thirst for adventure and wealth. For Morgan, this period confirmed his status as the undisputed leader of the buccaneers, ready for even more ambitious operations. His name already resounded loudly in the Caribbean, and the Spanish began to understand that they were dealing with an enemy who would be difficult to stop. By 1669, Henry Morgan had already gained fame as an elusive and ruthless pirate leader, but his ambitions only grew. After successful attacks on Cuba and Portobello, he sought new targets that could bring even greater plunder and strengthen his reputation. The next target became the Venezuelan Gulf, specifically the city of Maracaibo. This expedition, which took place in March 1669, became one of the most audacious in Morgan's career, and also demonstrated his ability to emerge victorious even from the most difficult situations. At the beginning of 1669, Morgan assembled a flotilla of 10 ships and 800 men. This force was ready for new achievements, but misfortune struck the pirates before the operation even began. In January, the flagship frigate Oxford exploded during a raucous drinking party. The loss of the ship could have undermined the crew's morale, but Morgan did not allow this to stop his plans. He regrouped his forces and led the flotilla across the Caribbean Sea to the Venezuelan Gulf. The first target was Fort La Barra, which guarded the entrance to the inner lagoon of Maracaibo. The pirates quickly captured the fort, as the Spanish garrison could not organize serious resistance. After this, they entered the city of Maracaibo unimpeded, which the residents had abandoned upon learning of the approaching buccaneers. Finding themselves in the city, the pirates began systematic plundering. They searched houses, churches, monasteries, covering every corner with their attention. Prisoners, as before, were subjected to cruel tortures to discover where valuables were hidden. Some were beaten and tortured, others were subjected to so-called tortures of St. Andrew, having burning matches driven between their fingers and toes. Some had rope tied around their necks so tightly that their eyes bulged from their sockets. Those who could not or would not speak often died under torture. For 3 weeks, the pirates squeezed everything they could from Maracaibo, but Morgan did not stop there. He organized daily raids on the surrounding areas, which each time brought new plunder. Not one of these raids ended empty-handed. Next, Morgan decided to attack the city of Gibraltar, located on the other shore of Lake Maracaibo. The pirates spent 5 weeks there, looting houses and continuing to torture prisoners. The plunder accumulated, and the buccaneers were already preparing to return to Port Royal when they encountered a serious problem. Returning to Maracaibo, they learned that the exit from the lagoon was blocked by a Spanish naval flotilla of 3 ships, led by Vice Admiral Don Alonso del Campo y Espinosa. The Spanish had also fortified Fort La Barra, preparing a trap for the pirates. The situation looked hopeless. The pirates found themselves in a closed lagoon with limited resources and a superior enemy. Morgan demonstrated his cunning and strategic talent. First, he demanded ransom for Maracaibo and the prisoners, which allowed him to buy time and replenish supplies. Then, the pirates prepared a fire ship, a vessel packed with combustible materials that was used as a fire weapon. This fire ship became the key to victory. The pirates directed it at the Spanish ships, and the fire destroyed part of the enemy squadron. At the same time, Morgan used cunning to deceive the Spanish in Fort La Barra. His men simulated preparation for a land assault, forcing the garrison to shift forces to the shore. This opened the pirates' path through the narrow strait, and they broke out into the open sea. On May 17, 1669, Morgan returned to Port Royal in triumph. The plunder brought by the pirates was valued at 250,000 pieces of eight, including goods and slaves. This sum was enormous even by the standards of wealthy Port Royal. The expedition's success further strengthened Morgan's position as leader of the buccaneers. His ability to escape from seemingly hopeless situations through cunning and boldness became legend. At the same time, this expedition once again showed the cruelty of Morgan and his men. The tortures inflicted on prisoners became an integral part of pirate culture, where human life often lost any value. After returning to Jamaica, Morgan temporarily withdrew from active pirate operations. Governor Modiford, feeling political pressure, canceled privateering commissions against the Spanish. Morgan and his wife, Mary Elizabeth, settled on their plantations in Clarendon, where he seemed to plan to enjoy his wealth. The quiet life proved not to his liking. Rumors of Spanish military preparations and attacks by their corsairs on British ships soon gave Morgan a new pretext to return to piracy. The Jamaican authorities, despite official peace negotiations with Spain, sought ways to justify new raids. Morgan, as always, was ready to lead them. By 1670, Henry Morgan had reached the pinnacle of his piratical career, becoming the acknowledged leader of the Caribbean buccaneers. His previous raids on Portobello and Maracaibo had brought him fame, wealth, and a reputation as an elusive strategist. Morgan now aspired to execute an even more audacious plan: an assault on Panama, one of the richest and most important cities in the Spanish colonies. This expedition, which took place from 1670 to 1671, became the culmination of his career while simultaneously revealing all the cruelty and ruthlessness of pirate life. The foundation for the Panama campaign began forming in the summer of 1670. In Jamaica, rumors spread about Spanish military preparations and attacks by their corsairs on British merchant vessels. One such attack, carried out by Spanish ships from Santiago de Cuba on Jamaica's northern coast, provided the pretext for action. In June, the Jamaica Council appointed Morgan as admiral and commander-in-chief with full authority to damage Spanish interests. His official mission sounded rather diplomatic: to determine how the Spanish were treating English prisoners and to avoid bloodshed. The pirates merely laughed at this wording, understanding that their goal was plunder, while diplomacy remained far behind. On August 14, 1670, Morgan set sail from Port Royal to the southwestern coast of Hispaniola. His flotilla numbered 11 ships and 600 men, but soon 3 more captains joined him who had recently plundered Grenada in Nicaragua, along with other English and French pirates. By winter, an impressive force had gathered under Morgan's flag: 36 ships, including 28 English and 8 French vessels, with approximately 2,000 men. Such a pirate flotilla amazed even experienced sea wolves with its scale. To justify their actions before the English authorities, the pirates used testimonies from Spanish prisoners. One of them, on November 29th, swore under oath that he had seen troops assembled in Cartagena for operations against the English, and that Spanish ships had received letters of marque for attacks on Jamaica. Later, in 1671, Surgeon Richard Brown confessed that the pirates had forced prisoners to give the required testimonies by threatening death. Morgan masterfully used such methods to give his actions an appearance of legality. On December 2, 1670, aboard the flagship frigate Satisfaction, a war council was held where officers decided that capturing Panama was necessary for Jamaica's defense. This city served as a true pearl of the Spanish colonies, through which streams of silver and gold from South America passed. On December 16th, Morgan's flotilla set sail for Central America. The first stage of the operation was the capture of Santa Catalina Island, modern-day Providencia, at the end of December. This island had strategic importance, serving as a springboard for the assault on the Panama Isthmus. From there, Morgan sent an advance detachment under Joseph Bradley's command, which stormed the fortress of San Lorenzo de Chagres. This victory opened the path to the main strike. On January 18, 1671, Morgan led 1,800 men across the Panama Isthmus. The 9-day jungle crossing exhausted the pirates. They suffered from hunger, disease, and attacks by local tribes. On the 10th day, they reached Panama and began their attack. Spanish forces attempted to resist, but the pirates routed them in open battle. Having captured the city, Morgan and his men began ruthless plunder. They burned Panama, and over the following 3 weeks, they ravaged the surrounding areas searching for treasure. Prisoners, as in previous campaigns, were subjected to horrific torture. The pirates displayed bestial cruelty. Monks were killed even if they had nothing to give, while women were raped or tortured if they couldn't reveal hiding places. Morgan himself, despite his general status, actively participated in these atrocities, especially when it came to young women who were brought to him. On February 24th, the pirates left Panama, taking with them 157 mules loaded with gold, silver, precious stones, and goods. The total value of the plunder was estimated at least 6 million escudos, an astronomical sum for that time. However, when it came time to divide the spoils, each expedition participant received only 10 pounds, though the pirates had initially expected 800 pounds per person. Such distribution caused dissatisfaction, and mutiny began brewing among the buccaneers. Sensing danger, Morgan and his officers hastily loaded most of the treasure onto ships and fled to Port Royal, leaving many pirates empty-handed. This campaign became Morgan's peak of glory while simultaneously revealing his pragmatic and ruthless nature. He had plundered one of the richest cities in the New World and managed to avoid the trap the Spanish had prepared. However, his actions had broader consequences. The attack on Panama occurred after the signing of the Anglo-Spanish peace treaty in Madrid, which Morgan may not have known about. Governor Modiford tried to justify himself to London, claiming he had sent Morgan a message about the peace, but the courier supposedly didn't arrive in time. Later, one of the pirates confessed that the letter with news of the peace had arrived 3 days before the attack, but Morgan had ignored it. This endangered his own career and Jamaica's position in the eyes of the English crown. After the triumphant but controversial Panama campaign in 1671, Henry Morgan returned to Port Royal as a hero of the pirate world. Yet his actions caused serious political consequences. The attack on Panama, carried out after the signing of the Anglo-Spanish peace treaty in Madrid, placed Jamaica and Morgan himself in a delicate position before the English crown. This period became a turning point. Morgan, who had previously acted under cover of official commissions, found himself under threat of losing his freedom. But thanks to his cunning and political connections, he managed to avoid punishment. On May 31, 1671, Morgan presented his report on the Panama expedition to the Jamaica Council. He described his actions in detail, emphasizing that he had acted for the defense of English interests and Jamaica against the Spanish threat. The council approved his actions and officially expressed gratitude for carrying out the mission. Governor Thomas Modiford, who had supported Morgan's pirate raids for years, was also satisfied with the results, as part of the plunder traditionally went to Jamaican authorities and even reached London. However, the situation was perceived differently in England's capital. The attack on Panama caused a diplomatic scandal, as it violated the terms of the peace treaty with Spain. Charles II's government decided to place all blame on Governor Modiford, who had sanctioned the pirate operations. The new governor of Jamaica, Sir Thomas Lynch, received clear orders from London: arrest Modiford and send him to England for trial. In November 1671, Modiford was arrested and placed in the Tower, though the conditions of his imprisonment were quite comfortable. For Morgan, the situation also intensified. In March 1672, he was sent to England aboard the warship Welcome. This was a moment of uncertainty. Morgan, who was accustomed to being a hero in Jamaica, now found himself in a position where his fate depended on the English government's decision. However, unlike Modiford, no official charges were brought against Morgan. In London, it was believed that he had acted under official orders from Jamaican authorities, so his direct responsibility for violating the peace remained questionable. In England, Morgan found himself in a unique situation. Instead of ending up in prison, he was given the opportunity to communicate with influential people and defend his reputation. His connections, charisma, and ability to present his actions as necessary for defending English interests played a key role. The trial of Modiford also brought insignificant consequences. His guilt was difficult to prove, and the case gradually turned into a farce. Morgan, for his part, used this time to strengthen his position. He avoided punishment and managed to gain favor at the English court. His actions in Panama, though controversial, were perceived as proof of his military talent, and in conditions of tense relations with Spain, this mattered. This period became a kind of test for Morgan. He had already transformed from a simple pirate who robbed Spanish cities into a figure known in London. His connections with Jamaican elite and the English government opened new prospects. Morgan understood that piracy, despite all its benefits, had its limits, and he began preparing the ground for transitioning to official status. His stay in England became an opportunity to rethink his career and find a way to legitimize his position. While Morgan was in London, the situation in Jamaica was changing. The new governor, Thomas Lynch, tried to reduce the influence of pirates and strengthen control over the island. But the buccaneers, who were accustomed to freedom and Modiford's support, slowly submitted to the new rules. Morgan, though far away, remained a symbol of pirate liberty, and his return to Jamaica was only a matter of time. His ability to emerge unscathed from this situation showed that he could fight and maneuver in political games as well as in naval battles. After returning from England in 1674, Henry Morgan found himself at a new stage of his career. The diplomatic scandal over his attack on Panama had unexpectedly elevated him to a higher level. The English crown, recognizing his merits and military talent, granted him a knighthood in November 1674. For a man who had recently been a pirate plundering Spanish colonies, such an honor seemed unprecedented. Morgan received the position of Lieutenant Governor of Jamaica, making him one of the key figures on the island. This period of his life was marked by attempts to reconcile his piratical past with his new status as an official representative of authority, while revealing his contradictory nature. Returning to Jamaica as Sir Henry Morgan, he settled in Port Royal, where his reputation as a legendary buccaneer still commanded respect among the local pirates. His new role demanded an entirely different approach. As Lieutenant Governor, Morgan had to maintain order, promote the island's development, and carry out the English Crown's directives. This included controlling piratical activities that had previously been the foundation of his fame. Such a transition proved difficult. Morgan, who had led pirate raids for years, now had to restrain those who followed in his footsteps. This duality became a source of conflict with new governors and drew criticism from the English government. In May 1676, Lord Vaughan, the new governor of Jamaica, sent a report to London accusing Morgan of continuing to support piracy despite his official status. Vaughan wrote that Sir Henry actively praised privateering, creating obstacles to plans for reducing the number of pirates on the island. For Morgan, piracy remained part of Port Royal's culture, which ensured Jamaica's economic prosperity. Many buccaneers considered him their patron, and he seemed reluctant to sever these ties. His loyalty to the pirate brotherhood contradicted his new duties, creating tension with higher leadership. Despite this, Morgan maintained his influence on the island. His authority was based on past exploits and his ability to find common ground with both the local elite and the pirates. He understood how to balance between official authority and the informal structures of Port Royal. In 1678, Lord Vaughan, having failed to curb piratical activity, transferred his powers to Morgan and departed for England. For 4 months, Morgan served as acting governor of Jamaica. During this brief period, he proved himself an effective administrator. Under his initiative, 2 new artillery batteries were built in Port Royal, named after Prince Rupert and the Earl of Carlisle. These fortifications strengthened the island's defenses, which was important given the constant threat from the Spanish. Morgan received an annual salary of £600 sterling, indicating his high status. He also quickly established relations with the new governor who arrived after Vaughan, allowing him to retain his influence. Port Royal remained a center of piratical activity, and the buccaneers felt comfortable on the island, knowing that Morgan, despite his official position, would not be quick to punish them. However, in 1680, the situation changed. After another pirate raid on Portobello carried out by John Coxon and his associates, Morgan was forced to act. Under pressure from the new governor, the Earl of Carlisle, he began pursuing the most active pirates. Several buccaneers were arrested, and 2 particularly bold ones were executed by hanging. These actions were a forced step for Morgan, as he risked losing his position if he refused to demonstrate loyalty to the crown. This period of Morgan's life showed how difficult it was for him to completely abandon his piratical past. He tried to adapt to his new role, but his heart seemed to remain with the buccaneers. His actions as lieutenant governor were a compromise. On one hand, he fulfilled his duties by strengthening the island's defenses. On the other, he tried to maintain the loyalty of pirates who considered him their own. This duality drew criticism while helping Morgan retain power in Port Royal. He became a symbol of a transitional era when Jamaica balanced between piratical freedom and attempts to become a respectable colony. The role of lieutenant governor gave Morgan the opportunity to legitimize his position and step away from the risky life of a pirate. At the same time, it revealed his inability to completely break ties with his past. His support for pirates, though veiled, created tension with governors who sought to subdue the buccaneers. Morgan remained a man who could maneuver between 2 worlds, but this balance became increasingly difficult. Ahead lay his final years, when health and lifestyle began to take their toll. By the end of the 1670s, Sir Henry Morgan, now a recognized knight and lieutenant governor of Jamaica, had reached the pinnacle of his career. His name had become synonymous with piratical glory, and Port Royal remained the center of his influence. However, Morgan's final years were overshadowed by deteriorating health, loss of former energy, and gradual decline. This period became the final chord of his turbulent life while emphasizing the contradictory nature of his character, from king of the buccaneers to an ailing administrator trying to maintain his authority. After serving as acting governor in 1678, Morgan continued to remain an important figure in Jamaica. His status as lieutenant governor and knighthood ensured respect among the local elite, while his connections with pirates maintained the loyalty of buccaneers. However, his lifestyle began to affect his health. Morgan, known for his love of loud banquets and alcohol, gradually lost his physical form. Obesity and cirrhosis of the liver became serious problems that undermined his strength. By the early 1680s, he had already lost the vigor of the leader who had once headed bold raids on Spanish colonies. His appearance and behavior, according to contemporaries, began to lose human likeness, reflecting the consequences of years of dissolute living. Despite this, Morgan tried to remain active in the island's affairs. He maintained order in Port Royal, where his name still carried weight. At the same time, the political situation in Jamaica was changing. The English crown increasingly sought to curb piracy, which had previously been a profitable tool against Spain. New governors, such as the Earl of Carlisle, pressured Morgan, demanding harsher actions against buccaneers. In 1680, after pirate John Coxon's bold raid on Portobello, Morgan was forced to act more decisively than before. He organized the pursuit of the most active pirates, and several were arrested. 2 hardened buccaneers were even executed by hanging. These actions were a difficult choice for Morgan. He, a man who had been a pirate himself, was now forced to punish his former comrades to keep his position and maintain the crown's favor. This period became a time of compromises for Morgan. He tried to balance between loyalty to English authorities and support for the pirate community, which considered him their patron. His health deteriorated and political pressure increased. By the end of the 1680s, Morgan had already lost the ability to actively participate in the island's affairs. His physical condition became critical, and he increasingly withdrew from active life. Port Royal, which had once buzzed with pirate revelries, also began to lose its status as a center of buccaneers, as the English administration tightened control. On August 25, 1688, Henry Morgan died in Port Royal. His death became a noted event. The next day, Morgan's body was brought to the government building in Port Royal, then to St. Catherine's Church. From there, it was carried to Palisadoes Cemetery, where he was buried with full honors. All forts and ships in the harbor fired a funeral salute, paying tribute to the admiral of the buccaneers. This gesture emphasized how significant a figure Morgan was for Jamaica, despite all the controversies surrounding his name. Morgan's legacy proved complex. On one hand, he was a product of his era, a cruel, greedy, and unprincipled pirate whose actions left behind devastated cities and hundreds of victims. His campaigns against Portobello, Maracaibo, and Panama brought enormous wealth at the cost of thousands of lives, including prisoners who were tortured for treasure. On the other hand, Morgan proved to be a talented strategist and leader who could unite people and achieve the impossible. His ability to maneuver between the pirate world and official authority allowed him to survive and achieve high status, which was rare for people of his background. Interestingly, 4 years after his death in 1692, Port Royal was struck by a powerful earthquake. As a result of the catastrophe, Morgan's grave ended up underwater. For many contemporaries, this became symbolic. The sea, which had been his element, seemed to have reclaimed its favorite general. This event added a mystical aura to his figure, making him a legend both in life and after death.